Okay. All right, awesome. So again, thank you so much and good afternoon. Can you believe it's already August 1st, 2023. We're at the trenches of the summer ending, and before you know it, we'll be jumping into fourth quarter of the year. This year definitely went super fast. All right, so today's topic we're going to talk and dive deep into. It's called Vacant Land Property Scams Are on the Rise and Know the Red Flags. So the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because we've had some agents who have been involved in scams, and ultimately the red flags that may potentially cause and put you in a very difficult situation. So I wanted to have this as a precaution, an opportunity for you to see the red flags, and more so, it's that funny gut feeling, right? When something doesn't feel right, doesn't resonate well. What are the avenues and the procedures to ultimately tack on? All right, so we're going to dive deep into those conversations, and again, please ask a lot of questions. The goal of today is just really to get a better understanding. Is, it's very exciting when you do have a vacant land listing agreement signed and executed by a potential seller, but it's not fun and exciting when you don't have the real sellers, and ultimately you cannot transfer ownership, or more so, the actual owner gets defrauded from a particular parcel of land. So that's what today's topic. Let's dive deep into it, and let's start. So, all right, so rise in vacant land property scams. So what's happening is that the U.S. Secret Service and the cyber crime investigation has really absorbed a sharp increase in reports of what we call real estate fraud. And that is an associate of what we see on encumbered properties, not necessarily residential, commercial, mobile home, manufactured home, multifamily. It's more raw land. Remember, because here's the problem that we see a lot is when you go on a residential appointment, right? On a listing appointment, you typically meet with the seller. You'll sit down, evaluate, and then have a listing presentation. Well, when it comes to raw land in remote areas, there's really no need for the seller and the agent to really meet, because you're not going to meet at a physical location such as a house, a duplex, triplex, fourplex, a commercial building, manufactured home, mobile home, townhomes, or condominiums, right? This is strictly raw land. So title agents across the country has also reported, not just in California, but also in other parts of the US. Now, I'm going to share with you real life scenarios that have happened to one of our agents here, and then another agent at another office too, that ultimately were involved in a mediation because of the wrong identity and the wrong homeowner, excuse me, not homeowner, but vacant landowners, true entity. So the California Association of Realtors and its attorneys, and obviously members legal hotline, have spoken with agents who have taken listings on vacant land where the person who signed the listing agreement, and what do we do when we sign listing agreements? Usually we send it electronically, right? We do DocuSign, right? Ink signature as an example, but they may not be the true owner to that particular land. So how does the scam work? Well, obviously, any type of criminal activity that involves any real estate is definitely a crime and an entity theft. And the criminal will typically search public records to find unencumbered property, meaning these are properties that do not have mortgages, okay? These are properties that are free and clear, that there is no first deed of trust, second deed of trust, or no mortgage whatsoever. These are outright owned by the owners of these lands. So typically, this is where victims typically get harm, is because now with technology, the ability to do a lot of research, you can put two and two together. Is if someone has owned a property for 5 years, 10 years, but you don't see any mortgages, they are in cahoots sometimes with title companies. And now with the mass of the internet, you can definitely do a lot of research and find out, what assets particular homeowners own, aside from residential, commercial. They identify these vacant lands. Also pose as the owner to sign the listing agreement, conduct all communications all online, and will never meet in person. So these are big indicators that ultimately will cause us to really think, okay, do I or am I speaking with the right people? Okay. And now these so-called scam artists are also falsifying notary documents too. So they're in cahoot in alignment with notaries that ultimately get these grantees signed. And now there's a movement of transfer of these particular lands. What are the red flags that you as an agent should be familiarized with? Well, the criminal will never meet in person, but nearly all communications are online or through text messages. Criminals typically target, zero mortgage, free and clear properties. Vacant land is usually involved. Otherwise, the chances of true owner finding out much higher, right? Because these properties that are owned, these parcels, they may have owned them for years and years and years, and they're not one that they physically see this property on a regular basis. So these are, again, identifiers and opportunities for these scam artists to really dive deep into working with an agent and pretending to be the owner of this land. So vacant lands usually involve, otherwise the chances of the true owner finding out and much higher than the same as a true for an estate property, where the property has not been properly transferred to years after the death of the owner. So again, this is where they find information, is that, let's say a husband and a wife own a piece of real estate out in Riverside, right? They own 1 acre of property that they bought 25 years ago. And now they have not done anything, but they still own it because their belief and their way of thinking was that this piece of parcel in the future is going to be worth more money than it is. So one of the indicators that we see a lot of fraud is that these so-called false owners really want to list the property at dirt cheap, basically as land, dirt cheap. So you have to do your fiduciary responsibility, your due diligence, and really identify is, why is this homeowner, vacant owner looking to sell this property that is super cheap? For example,
I have to just figure out how I can send you an audible credit.
But I told her I have like 10 audible credits.
Just real quick. What you'll see is that if you do a little bit of research, you'll see that they probably bought this property 10, 15, 25 years ago. They bought it for $15,000, right? And now they're trying to sell it for less than that or a little bit more than that. Those are indicators that I want you to be very clear and concise when having those conversations with these so-called owners, is identifying and asking a lot of questions, because this is where you'll fall trapped to these scam artists that are taking advantage of these vacant lands. Now you're going in the motions of opening an escrow, and now you're having some issues or some dilemmas. Okay. A new deed may have been recently recorded. This is an effort to erase the prior owner from trail of any communications and keep the scammers from being found. Now, when you're doing your due diligence, part of the factor is you're going to do your research, right? You're going to start checking and identifying as you get title involved, you do a property profile, you identify how many owners are. If there's one owner or 5 owners, you want to make sure that you have everyone as part of this transaction. Because what happens is if you're communicating with one person, but there's actually 2 people on title, you can not technically transfer ownership and you shouldn't be able to even list the property. But the problem is when it comes to vacant land is you don't necessarily meet with the owner of the land. And this is why you have to take extra precautions, extra due diligence, and really ask more and more questions so that way you can identify that this person is the true entity of this piece of land. The other aspect is a quick closing is demanded, right? Usually when you're talking to someone, are you being proactive in your engagements? For example, someone calls you and says, hey, I'm interested in selling my piece of land over on, 123 ABC. I says, okay, let me do a little bit of research. Immediately, you should be on the property profile identifying, because sometimes these particular lands don't even have an address. So now you have to reference and find out through the APN number, right? Which is the social security to that specific parcel. That'll give you an indicator, one, who are the true owners on paper, and are you actually talking to the true owners of that piece of vacant land, right? So this is where you need to roll up your sleeve and identify if this is the individual. Ask questions, because you've already done your due diligence. If you know that this property was bought 10 years ago, right? It'll tell you on the property profile that they bought it on October 15 of 2010, right? And when you're asking questions via over the phone or text messages, well, tell me a little bit more about this land that you're planning to sell. All right. You want to start asking embedded questions till I find and identify if this individual knows anything and everything about this particular land. If there's something missing, then that should be your alerts saying, hey, something just doesn't feel right. Then the next step would be would it be possible if we can maybe possibly jump on a Zoom? I like to introduce myself and we can do a 30-minute segue just to do an introduction, but I want to know who the actual owner is. Ask to see if you can jump on a Zoom. If anything, the best approach is I would not just go back and forth with text messages or phone. Now you really need to start having those engagement and say, well, I would love the opportunity to meet in person or at that location. Remember, your job is to protect your client's best interest, right? And the only way you're going to do so is that if you know and identify the true entity of this particular parcel. Now, and in the actual engagement, it's perfectly fine to meet with a person. Either says, hey, I would love the opportunity to meet based on the property profile. It looks like your taxes go to this address out in Pasadena. Would that be a place to meet? Remember, you have to be proactive and look at all the information, because most of the mail taxes does not go to a piece of land. There's usually not a mailbox. So there's going to be a forwarding address, and then that address can be here locally. Then that's your avenue, that's your opportunity, right? Is to say, well, it looks like all of your taxes and information goes to this address out in Torrance, as an example. We can meet tomorrow to discuss. And if they are not in agreement to do so, then that's your alert right there, right? Something is up. A lot of these scam artists, what they're doing is they're saying, well, I'm out of the country. I am not here. Okay, now that's when you're going to have even more conversations to identify, what the real situation is. Remember, use cautions. And these are the typical red flags that we are seeing right now that unfortunately agents are not taking this seriously. And now it's putting strain and issues regarding these particular transactions. I think someone had a question here. So Robert says, speaking of Riverside County, a few years ago, some owners were discovering armed road operations on their property. Yeah, that's bananas. That can happen, right? Remember, the the owner of a piece of land has to do regular checkups on their interests, right? If they're not doing regular checkups, who knows what's going on? Someone can take over that piece of land or encroaching in someone's land, right? But if the owner is not actively engaged in checking in, then they're not going to know. So it is our job is to be proactive in our engagement, ask a lot of questions. If that means actually going there to find out more about it, then you got to do whatever you need to do. And here's the problem that I see with a lot of agents. They don't want to go in that direction. It's only raw land. It's only land. There's no plumbing, no electrical. There's no fence. There's nothing. I'm just selling dirt. I get it. But this is where we're seeing a high increase of fraud. And now because we listed a property, right, that was not by the right owner, that can put a liability back on us. And that's what I need you to caution yourself. I like what you said, Elizabeth. Absolutely. Adverse possession. It's funny. That's part of your real estate. When you got your real estate license, they talk about adverse possession. So these scam artists are asking for a quick closing, and they're really demanding, I want a super fast closing. And the effort is to sell the property quickly. They price the property well under market, right? So again, if something feels wrong, then it's probably wrong. If you know that 1 acre, 2 acres, 5 acres, 10 acres, 20 acres are going for a specific amount, and they are saying, yeah, sell it for 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, or 100,000, that again should be an alert. Hey, something just doesn't feel right. What is going on? That should be a big indicator that you need to do a little bit more digging deep into this conversation. Okay, if communication is only, again, via phone, call will come through as a burn phone, meaning that it's not even someone's phone number. It may be like a Google, right? How many times have you called a phone number and it doesn't go directly? It goes into like a Google or a third-party phone system, right? Again, start remembering this. Okay, that's 1. This is 2. This is 3. Things are just not in alignment. It's probably a scam. They will refuse to sign in person, and they will demand an e-notary, insisting on their own personalized chosen notary, or they will simply make the notary arrangements themselves. In essence, the criminals is not only impersonating the owner, but also the notary, and provides false documents to the title company. Now, title companies are also seeing more and more of these scam artists. So now they're also putting their position in security. And what I mean by that is that title companies are also saying, look, we're not going to do e-notary. We're not going to have you find a notary. We want our own notary that we're going to send to you, because these are certified individuals that have been verified by title companies to be legitimate notary publics. So in these times, they're going to protect themselves too, because if it is the wrong person or entity, then they can also be liable if the true owner comes back and says, look, I never listed my property. I would never sell my piece of land for that price. And more so, I did not sign any of the documentation. So what title is also doing is they are also red flagging these documents as well. Okay. They're also, in engagement to make sure that they are doubling, tripling, quadruple check that, the owner is the true entity. And if they see something, they'll immediately will let escrow know, and then also the agents involved, because you don't want this to go deeper and deeper and deeper. And now someone gets defrauded for money. Because if everything is in alignment, then you have the true owner and the true buyer. And the problem is when you start asking questions, sometimes the supposed scam artist that's behind the scene acting as the seller is now radio silence. They're not communicating. And now you're in escrow with the buyer that wants the property. And if the buyer feels that the seller breaches the contract, they can seek legal repercussions from it, right? And now put a lien against the land, right? Hire an attorney, put a specific performance. They don't know any better. This is why you need to be on the forefront of these conversations from the very, very beginning, because that will ultimately deviate any headaches once you're in escrow. This is why don't just send a listing agreement until you identify and verified that the owner is the true owner. Don't just send documents and expect that because they signed it back via DocuSign that you have the true owner. These are big indicators and big concerns that we are seeing right now with these type of rural lands being sold. They will refuse to sign in person and will demand the e-notary instead. So please make sure, and ultimately your engagement immediately when you are communicating with a so-called owner is getting title involved. Having title do a preliminary title check to see, was there a change in title? Because any type of changes in the last few weeks, few months can be a big red flag. And right now, more so than ever, everyone can do a quick claim, transfer a piece of land to someone else, right? And now we don't have the true entity of that individual. So again, your job, your responsibility is to be proactive and ask a lot of questions, because that's going to save you, one, the time, the effort, and the energy that you put in servicing a piece of land. What are some of the other red flags that we're seeing? The closing will be a mail out closing or remote closing, even if the owner resides in the same area as the property. They demand a cash close. The sale proceeds are distributed to a person who is not on title. It may happen that the true owner will call the listing agent to explain that they are not in fact selling their property. Okay, and that again has happened. So I want you to understand is that you gotta align that if it's a person, if it's an entity, if it's a corporation, if it's an LLC, if it's a trust, ask questions. Elizabeth, you say here that it's held by an LLC where we can verify the representing agent of the LLC decision maker. Yeah, absolutely. The beauty is that all corporations are public record, meaning you can go to the California state website. If it's a California S Corp, C Corp, LLC, or any type of corporation, you can research that corporation that is on title and find out who is the person in charge of that entity, right? And if that entity is different than the person you're communicating, something is up. That's a big red flag. That's a big indicator is, okay, who are you? Who is this person? That's already, getting my hairs behind my back, where now I'm asking more questions because do I truly have the right owner? And if I don't, that's when I need to start asking more and more questions. I'd rather you be engaged in the beginning before you even list the property on the market, that you have a scam going on, okay? And that's exactly what transpired with one of our agents. So the agent, picked up the listing, same motions. They got a call, hey, I'm interested in selling my property. Great. Where's the property? The property is a piece of land out in San Bernardino County. It's a 1.5 acres. I want to sell it. Wonderful. Okay. Let me do a little bit of research. So the agent started doing their due diligence, went on the property profile, checked the tax information, and identified that this was owned by 2 people. So that's where it all kind of started and resonated, was that the person he believed was talking was not the same person that was on title. So now this person was saying, oh, my apologies, my family member was the one that helped me facilitate this and has asked me to be involved in this transaction. Well, again, that's a big indicator, right? Because you cannot list the property if it's not the right person, okay? So immediately he says, well, I'd like to talk to Mr. John or Mr. Smith, whatever. In regards to this, I cannot help you here until and this is all being done via text message or an email too. It started with an email that followed up with text message. This individual would never pick up the phone. Even though an agent reached out, it would go to a voice message that sounded like a Google phone and never would get any response, but he would get a response back on a text message. So again, he didn't put 2 and 2. Finally, he was able to align that this was a very suspicious transaction. And therefore, I was having a conversation with someone else about vacant land scams going on. So he came up to me and he says, well, Simon, you know what? I have something similar. So I said, well, tell me a little bit more of this. Well, then he started going through the motions. I says, have you tried to maybe jump on a Zoom call to see who you're talking to? He has declined that request. Okay. Have you tried reaching out to this individual via phone? I have, but he responds back either an email or text message. I says, okay, have you asked to see if we can meet in person? He has declined that request because he says that he is working out of state and he is not able to meet in person. Well, this particular piece of property, I asked him, well, is there more than one owner on the property? And he says, yeah, it looks like it's a husband and wife. And I thought I was speaking with a husband. I says, did you even bother to ask, are they going through a divorce? Is there a litigation going on? Well, the problem, Simon, is that I cannot communicate. Everything is being done via email or text message. I says, okay, well, to me, it seems like something is up. I would definitely probably decide to cancel that listing. Ask more embedded questions and see if it is the true person. If not, I think your best approach is just to cancel. And thank goodness that he did. And he didn't go through the marketing and ultimately putting it on the MLS. And, the bigger picture is that he didn't get into an escrow regarding this. So I want to caution you on the importance of these type of situations that are occurring right now. They also, again, they demand cash close, that the sale proceeds are distributed to a person who is not even on title. Again, title should be up, escrow should be alerted as well, because they have to do their due diligence. If you by somehow miss this, then escrow needs to be that next layer of protection. And if escrow misses this, then title should be that layer of protection too, and they need to be in alignment and agreement. Do we really truly have that owner? Okay, and if not, then we need to cancel all that and not waste more time, because again, what we're seeing is it's either tying up the property, the buyer is now pushing for a specific performance, putting a lien against the property, and now they get an alert saying, hey, just want to let you know that your piece of land out in Riverside has a lien. So it's all public record. They're gonna see who the lien holder put that lien. And it's gonna say by so-and-so attorney of law or attorney firm, right? And then that homeowner is gonna say, well, there's the number on who put that lien. I'm gonna call that firm and ask, hey, this is John. My piece of real estate out in Riverside, parcel number 123778855, doesn't have an address. I see that you guys, how come? And then that attorney says, well, I'm the representative of the buyer that you're in escrow with. Escrow? What are you talking about? I never listed my property. And therefore, there's a lien here because there is a transaction that I didn't even authorize. Now we have a situation. There's the fraud, there's the scam. So I want to caution you and make sure that you are being diligent in your approach. Okay. If mailing proceeds, does that match the tax records, or would I ask title if let's see here. One second. If mailing the proceeds does not match the tax records, I would ask title what is going on. Absolutely, yeah. Remember, most raw land have a different address that the taxes, right? The taxes, the property taxes that they pay, right? It's not going to be the land, because typically they don't have a mailbox slapped inside that piece of parcel, right? Usually it's forward to an actual residential address or a commercial. So those are big indicators. Is obviously you want to verify it. If it's someone local that they have a property, again, here in the South Bay or LA County, it's your job, your responsibility to take the initiative. Wow, it's too far. I don't want to go all the way to Riverside to identify this piece of land. Well, yeah, it's your job. And again, if there's ever a potential litigation, it's going to fall out on you. Were you doing everything in your power, right, to make sure that this doesn't happen? And a lot of agents, unfortunately, are falling victim to this. So again, just be careful. It may happen that the true owner will call the listing agent to explain that they are not in fact selling the property, as I mentioned. And that can be a concern, right? How do we verify the owner's entity, right? So let's dive deep into that. As the listing agent, you already know a great deal about the transaction, right? You know if the property is vacant land, part of an estate, whether the property is underpriced, and how the seller chose to communicate, right? So those are, again, red flags, right? If they choose to text or email only, that's a big indicator. How many people truly sell real estate transactions via text? No. You either want to meet in person or meet on a Zoom conference to find out, is this person even a legitimate person? But remember that agents have a fiduciary, confidential relationship with their clients. So always treat everything very, very seriously, okay? Because it's, again, that's our responsibility. That is our job, right? You're not just going to list the property, think, oh, I've got a listing, right? Here, just sign here. You don't know if they're the owners, right? Because now it's putting time, frustration on your side, and you're not going to get paid. And what if this property gets tied up and now the buyer is suing the seller, but then the true owner is now suing the agent, right? Because one, they don't have a legitimate listing agreement in place. So be proactive, ask lots and lots of questions. If the transaction appears suspicious, then an agent may consider taking the following steps. Independently search for the identity and recent pictures of the property seller. You may be able to find pictures of the owner or identify information that can help you confirm who the true owner is. Request an in-person or virtual meeting and ask to see their government issue identification. Is it perfectly fine for us as real estate professionals to ask for ID? Absolutely, right? Think about this for a quick minute. You're at a bar, right? And you look under 30 years of age, right? What do? They ask for identification. Okay. It wasn't 21. Now they start asking if anyone looks younger than 30, they're gonna ask for some type of identification. Yeah, even the supermarkets when you're buying alcohol. Yeah, that's part of the procedure. It doesn't matter. They want to protect themselves. They're going to ask everyone. Just because you look young doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to card you. I'm going to card everyone because now people don't look their age. There's people that look older, but in essence are under 21. And there's people that look older, but are actually, people that look younger, but are actually older than 21, right? So to answer this specific questions, yes, you may ask for identification. Okay. What are you doing? You're just identifying the owner on title with the proper ID identification and the person that you're having a conversation with. And you can ask for identification. What's that? Well, now it's very, very hard to make fake ones, right? It's, it's not like in the 70s or 80s. Now these IDs and driver's license have a lot of protection like checks, right? It's hard to make copies of checks because they have a lot of layer of security features, right? If you look at your driver's license, if you were to pull your license right now, you can see it. If you look at it at an angle, there's a logo of the state. Your name is mirrored in there that you cannot manipulate, right? So there's a lot of things that protect the consumer against fraud, including your driver's license or ID. Okay. So again, these are just proactive engagements that will ultimately protect you from delays, right? If you have the true owner and they truly want to sell their piece of land, that's great. That's perfectly fine. That's what we're in the business for, right? But you also want to be precautious and concerned if nothing aligns, right? Something just doesn't feel right. Something doesn't resonate well. And that's telling you, hey, you know what? I need to be asking more and more questions. And it's okay to let it go. All right. Well, I lost this listing of 300,000 or 400 or $1 million. I get it. Okay. But at the end, do you want the headache and a potential litigation tie up of this property? Or will you walk away and go find the business? Okay. That's what I would do. Walk away. What do you do if you become convinced that the person who signed your listing is not the actual owner? Okay. Discuss the issue with obviously your broker. Your broker may consider canceling the listing through a negotiating cancellation, which is the form, the COL, right? The cancellation of listing. This helps to avoid claims, breach of the listing agreement. Remember, at the end of the day, the brokerage has the right to cancel any and all listings. And also on the listing, there's a provision that says that the brokerage has the authority within 5 days to review and agree to the terms that you put with that seller. And if the brokerage is not in agreement with it, the brokerage can cancel the listing. Because at the end, the agents do not own the listing. It's the corporation, the brokerage itself. Does that make sense? And there's a provision on the listing agreement that says that broker approval, I can't on top of my head remember the paragraph, but it says that the brokerage has 5 days to review and approve it or have the right to cancel the listing. And if we see any issues with it and you don't, every listing that comes in, I'm talking to my compliance officer and telling our compliance, hey, any listings that are vacant land, bring them to my attention. Because one, as a broker, I want to be proactive that I'm having conversations with the agent. Maybe they are not in tune to everything and they just got super excited, sent out documents, got the listing signed back and think they have a legitimate listing. But I've talked to the compliance officer and says, look, any listings that we get that are vacant land, bring them to my attention. I want to at least have a conversation with the agent. And my conversation is going to be with any of you is, tell me a little bit more about this listing, okay? Why do you think I'm doing this? To protect the agent, to protect the company, and obviously to protect the broker. Because I don't want to be in a litigation. So I'm going to be asking questions that are like this. Tell me a little bit about this listing. How did you get this listing? Have we verified? And how did you verify this owner or owners of corporation? Did you meet the person? Did you do a Zoom? Did you have communications via phone? I'm going to ask these questions, right? Have you done a evaluation? Meaning, is the property what you listed for correct? Or are you listing the property way below what the actual value of that piece of land is, right? Why am I asking those questions? Because again, I want to make sure that I'm protecting our agents. Elizabeth says, what is the time frame that an agent needs to submit to broker again, or is this just when it gets into escrow? Very good question, Elizabeth. So once you get a listing signed by the seller, you have 72 hours. Pass that over to your transaction coordinator or upload it into the command. Okay, 72 hours from getting the listing. So if you get the listing today is 0 of 72 hours, right? So you have Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday to upload that listing on our command platform. Once that listing is uploaded into our system, our compliance officer will create a file for that specific parcel. And then if you're part of the 2 offices, then I will get an alert from our compliance. Hey, Simon, we just got another listing that's raw in San Bernardino, Ventura, LA County, San Bernardino, Orange County, San Diego, wherever it is, right? I'm going to get an alert. It doesn't matter if it's residential land, commercial, whatever that is, anything that has to do with raw land that can be a potential issue, it's going to be brought to my attention. Then she's going to say, well, so-and-so, and I'm going to use Jim Provencio as an example because he's right in front of me. I'm going to reach out to Jim. Hey, Jim, congratulations on getting that vacant land out there in Orange County. Wow, a 1-acre property for $750,000, right? Now I'm going to start asking questions because I want to make sure, especially right now with the rise of so many frauds when it comes to vacant land. Okay, so hopefully that kind of answers your question. Although your instance may be to immediately report any suspicions to the police or title company, you and your broker may wish to consult with our attorney before doing so. It is possible that the issue related to a confidential fiduciary duty or other potential legal risk management issues. Any decision to warn others, publicize information about the scammer should be made carefully after close consideration of the specific facts in your situation and only after consulting with the broker. Again, our number one goal is to protect you and obviously protect people that are victimized with these scams. And, it's happening more and more. It's happened twice that I'm aware of, one in this office and one in another office. Okay, so please do your due diligence, make sure you're asking a lot of questions, and it's common sense, right? Common sense. If nothing aligns, then that's probably a scam. Probably a scam. Yes, sir.
I think one of the quick taking contracts here when I take a contract with the Master Columbus, I always get a copy of the driver's. Okay, getting a copy of the driver's license, how do you verify that it is really him?
Yeah, you're saying when you get a copy of the driver's license? Well, you wanna verify, because remember, all you're doing is paper trail, right? You're protecting you. And there's so many avenues in how they can defraud people, right? You got to do as most as you can to possibly avoid a potential scam, right? As you said, get a copy of that driver's license. Do a little bit of research, get title involved. And obviously, if they're meeting with you, then most likely they're probably the true entity. This is more for the red flags, the challenges, people that don't want to be met, people that don't want to know who they are, people that don't want to communicate other than email or text messages.
And the next one is to get a copy of the Social Security.
Well, I don't think Social Security is really necessary. Just a California ID or driver's license, or even a passport that identifies the name and photo of that individual is more than enough.
Are we allowed to sell real estate to non-citizens?
The answer is yes, if it's cash. Yeah, the answer is yes.
But if it's not cash, then
Well, they may have a hard time trying to get financing. Because they're gonna want to run a credit check, and if they don't have a FICO score, and if they don't have a Social Security, then it's gonna be hard to have employment sometimes here in the US. So I would check with the lender, see if there's any specific programs.
yeah, that's
Robert says, this is somewhat off topic, but important. I just read a CAR memo cautioning helping clients after our agency ends, which is when escrow closes. Any issues such as the seller leaving property or debris should be approached carefully, as it could be constructed as continuous of the agency creating a new one or practicing law without a license. That's a very good question, Robert. And the more that
Whatever
you-
fits in there, that works.
What's that?
Of course you may.
Did someone say something? Oh, okay. Let me mute a couple people here on the, I think it might be Jasmine. Okay. So, Robert, to answer your question, and yes, this is off, and you're more than welcome to reach out to me directly if you like. But just in the long and the short of it is that, yeah, once the deal records and it's officially closed, then your job and your responsibility ends. Okay. And I know that there's always going to be issues. This is why you and the other agent need to collaborate and make sure you're on the forefront of those conversations. If you know that there is potential issues with debris on the property, this is why we do the final walkthrough, right? The verification of final walkthrough that allows the buyer 5 days prior to close to make sure that the property is still in the same condition as when they submitted their offer, right? Any type of request of repairs that were done, that they were done. Any issues that look like, hey, it doesn't look like they are moving, this is where now you want to start having conversations and you want to document all this stuff, because yes, the seller's responsibility is to remove any personal items, including debris, that it is on the property. And this is, again, a collaboration between you as the agent and the other agent to making sure that that is taken care of. And you may come across a situation where the seller says, look, I'm not gonna deal with it. I'm leaving all this stuff. It's the buyer's property and the buyer can do whatever they want, right? Well, the buyer may have rights for breach of the contract and may get a company out there to clear everything and now send a bill out to the seller for damages. So to avoid those situations, always bring it to the broker's advice, because when there's issues like that from the consumers, the buyers and the sellers, and sometimes there's not a meeting of mind between the agents, well, now you have another layer of protection is broker to broker, right? I step in as the broker or your broker, and then I will, reach out to the other broker and collaborate with the broker and bring the broker's attention of what's going on. And usually we can squash, diffuse, de-escalate the situation just by having those conversations and says, look, we just want to do the right thing. And the right thing is that, as the broker of your firm, that, you take ownership and responsibility with your agent and also the client as well. And then that broker will be engaged in the agent, but more so may even have a three-way conversation with the sellers. Look, seller, you're in breach of the contract. It is your responsibility to remove personal items on the property and leave the property clear, right? And again, that's being proactive, making sure that you're engaged and don't wait till the last minute. Get engaged, be there as part of the segue and responsibility of the process. And I can promise you, you're going to avoid many, many issues. Okay, Robert, I hope that kind of answers your questions. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. And then we'll wrap it up with this, additional resources, the United States Secret Service, cyber crime